Sight or vision? Do you have sight or do you have vision? Jordan River, chilly and cold. It chilled my body, but not my soul. Keep your sword in your hands, you fight on. Those are the lyrics to the song that rang out from Hopewell Missionary Baptist Church as me and my family entered to lay one of our own to rest. The tragedy. On one fateful Friday morning in July of 2019, a blue 2002 Ford SUV traveling northbound on I-95 experienced a tire blowout. The tire failure caused the driver to lose control of the vehicle. It spun out of control and flipped on its head. The 3 passengers were members of my family. One of them did not survive. That individual was a 30-year-old Jaleesa M. Moreland, who left behind 2 sons at the time who were 5 and 2. It immediately begged so many questions when I received that call that day. How? How could this happen to my family, a praying family, a faithful family who strives to do right by their community? Why? Why would this happen? How could a weekend getaway that was meant to be beautiful turn into such a dire tragedy? I also remember, as I was reflecting on that phone call, that I looked out the window shortly thereafter, and I began to note that it started storming really heavily, that my physical sight was reduced. I couldn't see very far beyond the window. And I thought it was ironic because it was indicative of the storm clouds that had begun to settle around me and my family, and the storm had been unleashed. Again, I was bogged down in details, asking myself so many questions, and even more so having an outer body experience, not even processing what was truly happening around me. But all of that ultimately led me to one grand question. Will I have sight or will I have vision? This presentation today is exactly about that. You see, people oftentimes use these 2 words up here on the screen, sight and vision, interchangeably, believing them to be synonymous with one another. When I make a very different argument, I believe that in actuality they're quite different. You see, sight is one's physical perception of the present. It's synonymous with eyesight, physically being able to observe, physically being able to see something, while vision is your intangible faith in the future. It is synonymous with discernment, inspiration, foresight, and perception. Those 2 words became the defining question for how were we going to overcome this tragedy that had just impacted our family. That even though our physical sight was reduced to a 1 out of 20, would our vision or our faith in the future continue to remain at a 20 out of 20? And how is it that we can discern between sight and vision, you ask? That leads us to our chapters for today. Chapter 1, you can't see the forest for the trees. Chapter 2, the beauty marks of hardship. And finally, chapter 3, do you have sight or do you have vision? Chapter 1, you can't see the forest for the trees. See, this is an old school saying that a lot of the elders in my family used to say to me coming up. You can't see the forest for the trees, son. It's a commentary about when you get so focused and driven in the details that are not relevant to your comprehension of the situation. What is the situation trying to teach you? What is the tragedy or the hardship experiencing? What is that trying to teach you? And so I have a few tips here to help us discern how we can see the trees instead of the forest. Tip 1, direction over speed. When I received that phone call that day, I immediately got bogged down. I immediately started focusing on the things that were not relevant to the situation, the how and the why and the pain, when I should have been focusing on my direction moving forward. How are we going to move past this, and what is it that I'm going to take away from this situation? Direction over speed. You see, the details of a tragedy can cloud your judgment. It can also cloud your path. So find your direction before you find your speed. There's an old African proverb that teaches us it's easy to go fast alone, but we'd much rather go further together. These statements are interwoven. You would much rather find your direction before you find your speed, because like the old folks say, there are many people going nowhere fast. So find your direction before you find your speed. Reorient yourself. Tip 2, focus on your comprehension over your apprehension. That is so important to note. Apprehension, it's rooted in fear. FEAR is an acronym. A lot of folks don't know that FEAR is an acronym. FEAR stands for false evidence appearing real. Fear, apprehension, they are synonymous. Your apprehension is rooted in your fear. Your apprehension to conquer a fear. Your apprehension to deal with the emotions that stem root from a tragedy. Your apprehension to try and overcome that tragedy and or let it go so you can move on. Apprehension. But instead of apprehension, we must make the active choice to choose comprehension, comprehending the gravity of the situation and the lesson that it is trying to teach you. And finally, and this is my favorite one, find your strength in your struggle. Life is a three-dimensional journey. Anytime that I've ever participated in a professional interview, whether it be for an internship or some scholarship, they always ask the common question, what do you consider to be your greatest accomplishment? I'm like, well, we all have a lot of accomplishments. You can see it there on that resume that I submitted in that application. But rather, a resume is just a two-dimensional piece of paper, a professional acumen that describes all the things that I've accomplished. But I tell them, I say, my biggest accomplishment is what you can't see. My three-dimensional journey that has been riddled with challenges that has brought me to this point. You see, people oftentimes see your breakthrough, but they don't know you've been through. I oftentimes use the metaphor of the mountaintop. People applaud you and laud you when you reach the summit, when you reach the peak. That's when they see you. But what they don't know is the many days and nights you spent hiking in order to get there. The many days and nights where you tripped, fell, stumbled, got cut, got bruised. That was what made you you, not the accomplishments, the journey you took in order to get there. So find your strength in your struggle and embrace that struggle. Struggling is not synonymous with failing. Struggling actually is quite the opposite. It is indicative of the fact that you are trying. Find strength in your struggle. Your forest. Your mind is a garden. Your thoughts seeds. You may choose to grow flowers or you may choose to grow weeds. Be mindful of this chapter. The next chapter, the beauty marks of hardship. I came up with a nice little 3-step diagram right here for you. See, a lot of times people think that when you are buried that you're not going to overcome. You see, life's hardships has a way of causing you to feel that you have been buried. In actuality, change your mindset. You've been planted. Think of it that way. Think of the hardship that you are going through as being planted. You see, the strongest and toughest trees were buried deep so that way their roots could grow even deeper. So you were buried. And in order for you to sprout, you must be buried first. Then you sprout. You see, life is like a slingshot. The further back you are being pulled, the further forward you're going to sling when it finally does let you go. So when you finally do sprout, your root system will be deep, and then finally you will blossom. You see, in order to be able to blossom in the light, you've got to be planted in the dark. And in order for you to grow strong, sometimes you've got to be planted deep. So you've got to go through some tough things in order to get where it is you're trying to go. The beauty marks of hardship. Wear your beauty marks. They are not scars. They are not ugly things to be hidden, rather things to be embraced publicly. The beauty marks of hardship, which then leads us to the final chapter, chapter 3. Do you have sight or do you have vision? You see, I don't want this presentation to confuse anyone. Vision is faith in tomorrow, but not a promise of it. I oftentimes find it ironic how we will disregard someone's presence, yet mourn their absence. You see, life truly is something that is unpredictable. And like the old folks always taught me, the richest place in the world for vision is the graveyard. So it is so important that we reach out and hold on to our vision, that we recognize when it is imperative to have vision, even when your sight is being reduced, even when life's inevitable hardships are coming at you. It is so important that you grasp onto vision and hold on to it. Let vision be your anchor. Let it root you deeply. So no matter how the winds may blow, you continue to remain firm. That we know weeping may endure for a night, but that joy comes in the morning. Holding on to your vision is what will see you through to that next morning. And even though my cousin Jaleesa is no longer here with us, I know that she is here with us in spirit and that she would want us to continue onward. That is what we have gained as a family. We've gained love. We've grown stronger and closer, more unified. And that is the lesson that we have learned from that situation. So remember this. Do you have sight or do you have vision? In honor of Jaleesa Moreland, thank you.